I don't have anything profound to say because I'm humbled by the speakers that we've all had the privilege of enjoying today. What I have done is spent a career of my life around profoundly clever people, and I have grown to steal from the best with pride and become a hybrid of everything that I'm not naturally to try and become slightly better at what I do, which is just to try and run companies to the best of my ability. And it's that I would like to talk about now, this context of where a lot of very, very successful people become very, very successful in a very, very different way. And it's a secret that I'd like to share with you today because I found it quite profound. Because people get it round the wrong way. I've then since gone on to run publicly owned companies. I then, as it was mentioned before, spent a couple of years in Hollywood running Simon Cowell's companies called Syco, which a couple of years later, I'll be honest with you, there was in hindsight a clue in the name, which I didn't initially pick up at the time. But again, it exposed me to this outstanding breadth of talent, truly gifted people that have striven to get to this extraordinary success because they've wanted to become successful, to become happy. And most of them have got it wrong. The best thing you can be at the outset is happy. And if you can literally wake up and find the good in anything that you want, success will come by default rather than by design. You don't have to sit there and try to make a load of money, try to become successful, try to become famous. If you literally just allow yourself to enjoy the fact that feeling good will bring success, it is a small but fundamentally important shift in your attitude that will make success become so much easier to you. And it's really quite important that I try to install this. For the avoidance of doubt, this isn't some sort of a weird semi-professional, you wouldn't have worked out that by now, motivational speech. This is just literally a secret that I like to share with people because money does not make people happy. It does not. A lot of very happy people end up statistically becoming a lot wealthier than others, as I say, because this happiness tends to self-fulfill and they become more successful people. But they don't end up often being happy just because they strove very, very hard to get money. Unless they were happy in the first place, it doesn't work. I spent a lot of 2 summers ago with a couple of extremely successful billionaires. And one of them has the most extraordinary super yacht, which he spends a huge amount of his life necessarily living on because he's a successful tax XL. And I was on his boat for 4 days, and he proudly, of all of the things that he talked about, which is that it took around about 20 minutes to get from the front to the back, as a full-time complement of staff of 19 people, he took me to the top deck where he very proudly, and this is devoid of any exaggeration, pointed out that his jacuzzi, which was enormous, and shaped with an effigy of a beautiful wild animal's head in its basin, was made entirely of 100,000 naturally coloured tiles from an extraordinary place in a desert in Africa. And that was his most proud boast of this entire boat, which was incredible. And he kept talking about these, they would call it the 100,000 tile jacuzzi of these natural tiles. And after 4 days of this hubris, I did have the pleasure when he was showing me this, and it was pre-advertised to me, of as he was taking a call to take over a small country, I was just wandering around this top deck looking at this thing. And after the end of it, I did say, it's an amazing boat. It's such a privilege to be here. Thanks very much. The tiles are amazing. It's sweet the way you call it 100,000. There's around about 97,000 tiles on there, in a bit of a jokey way. And he said, yeah, right. I said, no, there actually are. If you do the math, and I'm not autistic, but I did do the math, I literally said, I think there are about 97,000 tiles there, not 100,000 tiles, just by way of information. He literally went into an apoplectic rage, counted them, then had them counted by 2 members of staff, and the boat, and this is devoid of any exaggeration, was then turned around at tens of thousands of dollars of fuel cost to go and get the jacuzzi sorted out to go and find some more tiles. Money does not get happiness. The pleasure that I got out of that, I cannot begin to tell you. It's got naffle to do with money. It has nothing to do with fame. You will never, ever be happy if you believe happiness will come from being famous, or even if you believe happiness will come from being successful. Don't bloody bother. I spent a couple of privileged years running the most extraordinarily talented company with people that just wanted to create successful television. It just happened to be that format was about making people display their talents so that they became incredibly famous. And by default, that would make them happy. The people that it really worked for, that were people that had an amazing talent, that happened to become famous, and they were happy sharing their talent, happy finding an audience, happy doing what all of us want in this earth, and that's just to find a place in life, to find that we can make a contribution. But it's got naff all to do with it if you want to start by saying, I want to be famous. Fame will not in any way make you happy. Start happy and find some talents. You might find yourself extraordinarily famous as a result. Technology will not do it. And this concerns the arse out of me. I have the most fabulous 16-year-old daughter, and I call her fabulous on the excellent grounds I'm just a little bit frightened of her right now. And Holly, like an awful lot of people, are so completely obsessed with a small, shiny plastic and metal object which is absolutely stuck to them. Like something that has become an addiction, which is so thoroughly unhealthy. And to today's generation of children, and goodness knows where tomorrow's generation are going, are so obsessed with this because they believe it is a conduit to happiness, or in itself is providing happiness. Why? Because they are throwing small, brightly coloured birds at some pigs in a brick house. Or because they are deciding to like lasagna on Facebook, or to talk about the fact that they're tweeting that rain is in fact really wet, isn't it? And this obsession scares the living daylights out of me. This extraordinarily seductive thing with lovely little Apple logos on which we were all excited by a few years ago are becoming instruments of the ballsack of Satan himself, without wishing to in any way over-dramatize. And it does concern me, it concerns me hugely. But the worry of these things is extraordinary. And it does sound like I'm just inventing anecdotes. I am not. The reason I look this dishevelled, and I had a little bit of a lie down around the corner during the coffee break, is that I had a reasonably large stag night out last night. And this is when I was thinking about what I was going to say today, maybe because I'd drunk away the memory cells that I'd prepared for, as you might have realised by now. I realised that as we were out last night, and I need to explain, we were out with Nigel's stag do. We were at a place where a lot of people go for stag do's. It was a dance venue. It was less participative, to be honest with you, more observational. But it was as I woke up this morning in the hotel, worryingly close to this afternoon actually, I'd realised that I'd gone and left my phone in the booth, in the bar of the place that we were at. And it was then I was thinking, I was like, oh, I've got to get a hold of Debbie to work out how to get to TED and where is it and none of that sort of stuff. I realised that technology is not that clever. You know, despite the digital revolution and mobile convergence, my phone didn't follow me home like Mobley from the Car Phone Warehouse advert. Tell Debbie I was too ill to do TED, and maybe make me an Alka-Seltzer. Technology is not that clever. And I did go into Tottenham Court Road Car Phone Warehouse at 2:30 this afternoon, and I walked in rather shameful, and I said, it's a bit embarrassing, I've had my mobile phone stolen, you know, by some hoodies. And this prepubescent, technology-obsessed, spotty git of a 15-year-old behind the bar with this semi-broken voice, he says, no problem, and he put my phone number in, and he told me it was fantastic news. I could have a replacement phone there and then, because I was insured and I'd been a long-term customer, or I can pay just £50 and have an upgrade to get the very latest iPhone. And I said I didn't need the latest iPhone because I had an iPhone 4S. And he laughed in my face and told me an iPhone 4S was very last week, if you'll excuse me, okay? And he was obsessed by telling me that I needed to spend £50 extra to get an upgrade because iPhone 5 has got a better version of Siri, which is amazing, I imagine, if you have no life and friends and you feel it's important to ask a piece of technology when the train is to Swindon, and it will then tell you that it is raining in Nigeria or something stupid like that. I actually live with a female that's always right and sometimes knows the answers to my question before I even ask them, so I don't need this sort of technology. You know, I didn't take my dog to the vet last week to get it inoculated and bring it back later complaining because it bit me, and he said, yes, I upgraded you to a wolf, sir, because I thought that's what you would find important. Technology, and this admittedly is turning into therapy for me, so forgive me, technology is not in itself even a conduit to happiness or anything that would make you happy, but it's an obsession with today's generation. I also, with the utmost of respect to somewhat more medically qualified people in this room, I do respect, I'm not sure that inherent happiness has a lot to do with genes. I met my natural parents separately around about 8 years ago. I've recently had the privilege of meeting other brothers and other sisters that are either 50% or, for reasons I won't even bore you with, 25% my blood siblings. And I do have an understanding the difference between nature and nurture when I compare myself to those that I grew up with and those that I've subsequently met that were born of at least 50% of the same DNA. And I don't think it has a lot to do with genes either. It just literally is down to something that I think you can even leave here with and press reset. If you are not an inherently happy person, you may well think that it's just your character, your DNA, your circumstance, or just because you have the face that not even a mother could love. It ain't the case. You can all leave here and learn this extraordinary secret that success won't make you happy. Just being happy can create extraordinary success. It is a subtle but fundamental mind shift that will bring to you such a ridiculous amount of pleasure. And I would like you to leave here in not 8 minutes' time. I'm only going to talk for another 2. And try it for the rest of the day. Go and be relentlessly enthusiastic, passionate, succinct, dynamic, and very forward with everybody you meet. You'll be amazed at what happens. First off, they'll think maybe you've just experimented with recreational drugs if they've known you before, because you're selling a bit jiggy. And then you think, oh, maybe you fancy them after a while. But after a while, they just find that enthusiasm infectious. And there are just 4 rules. I'll give you little examples of them, and I'll hand you back to our fabulous hostess. And then we're going to get some fresh air and maybe go and be very, very positive to some people. The first thing is, go and be relentlessly nice to people, even knobs. It's a thing of joy. I don't mean be obsequious. I don't mean be gushy or sickly. Just go and be nice to people. Go and be enthusiastic. The whole idea of being inherently nice in every interaction you have, when you talk to that taxi driver, when you say goodbye to your colleague, and don't bother not getting eye contact. Actually get eye contact if someone holds the door at you. It's those simple things in that. A couple of other little rules. Act like an American. You're laughing. I don't mean eat so much your skin explodes or have a questionable foreign policy or anything like that. But just find a way of getting a connection, because whether you do it because you're a nice person or whether you do it because you just want to be more successful and get that person to be better at work, it doesn't matter. The latter will happen anyway if we just give out a bit, because it spreads like a positive cancer. And the other thing I think you need to do is basically, there are 1 or 2 people that us lot, there's 120 people here, we can't make everybody happy. Try it, but there are a couple of people out there, if you've come across Harry Potter, that are like Dementors. And they will suck the life out of every interaction you have. Stay away from them. They are bad and dark people. Don't employ them. Don't listen to them in the pub. And don't let your family marry them. Try to, personal experience, avoid marrying them yourself as well. The most important thing is you can create positivity around you. And if you can't, stay away. They are once again Satan's children. Stay away from them. And the last piece of advice I have to you is do things for the first time. In academia, conformity is everywhere. In business, success only happens because people don't really take risks the longer they're out the corporate ladder. And as adults, the older we get, the less likely we are to do things for the first time. And that will kill us. It will probably give us dementia. It will probably make us go blind. And it will probably, I suspect, make most of us not realize that life is a much more beautiful thing than we allow to bypass. And all you need to do is have a slightly different attitude. So I'm adopted. 1 more minute and I'll hand over to my colleague. I'm adopted. And I'm adopted into a family whose DNA is a tad more sporting than mine, okay? This, I'll be honest with you, built for pleasure, not performance, okay? My brother, a guy called Andrew, who I think is about 52, 53, something like that, some 6 years and 3 weeks ago at Easter was lamenting that as a 50-year-old, or thereabouts as he was probably never going to run a 4-hour marathon again in his life, which is terrible, I imagine, if you don't like beer and have no friends and don't get out and that sort of thing. So I was saying to my brother, I said, well, marathon, I bet I could do a marathon. And he said, I bet you can't. And then I said 4 words. I said, the Chardonnay in me said 4 words. I said, I bet I can. 3.5 weeks later, 6 years ago, almost to the day, all 18.5 stone of me was standing actually at the front of the Edinburgh Marathon. I was there with 10,000 semi-professional, enthusiastic amateur runners. I was wearing, devoid of exaggeration, a pair of trainers that had a Woolworths logo on. That is the last time that I exercised. I had a Sergio Tacchini tracksuit, and I had the fuel of self-belief. And I learnt 3 things that day, 6 years and 2 weeks ago. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't delusional. I knew I was probably not going to win it. I was pretty sure of that. But I learnt 3 things. Fact number 1, even though I was nervous, and they could tell I was nervous, I wasn't up there like Lycra, I was looking like baby Shamu, to be honest with you. Fact number 1, even though you're nervous on a marathon, do not smoke on the start line. They hate it. They went nuts for it. Fact number 2, sausage and egg McMuffin is not race fuel. That's another thing I found out. It's all devoid of enthusiasm. There are photos to prove it. Fact number 3, I learnt this fact. 6 hours, 17 minutes, and 14 seconds, 1 nipple, and 3 bouts of dysentery later. I learnt that fat people can run marathons. Now, I don't cheer, for the love of God. That's very sweet, but slightly patronising. I've done 8 or 9 more since then. They're not quite as embarrassing as that. This is still the veranda over the toy shop. It's more of a 1-pack than a 6-pack, I'm not going to lie to you. But that unique pleasure of saying, as Simon taught me, is an amazing expression. He said, let's try and do this, or let's die trying. Now, there are medics in the room. That's not actual advice, that you should actually die trying to achieve things for the first time. A week tomorrow, will be about 15 miles down the river, standing for my 10th and last London Marathon. In the last 6 years, this beautiful vista of taut muscle in front of you, he's schlepped his Tourette's-ridden chubby arse over 9 finish lines. This will be my 10th. I haven't run for 4 months. My knees are shot. My, what's that? It's not the tibia. What's that big one? It's a tester with a knuckle at the end of it. The femur. There you go. Just checking. There you go. That femur, twin of that one. All right. That's got a hairline fracture in it, a stress fracture, because I'm a fat bloke that shouldn't run. And it's being operated on 2 days after the marathon, on the Tuesday after the marathon. But I will stand there with 40,000 other people, so frightened a little bit of wee is probably going to come out of me at the start line. And I don't know if I'll make it or not. But the euphoria of doing so will last for many, many more years than the pain will. And I'm not an athlete, but I'm literally somebody that wakes up as the same way as I think we all are as of tomorrow. And we're going to just get a little bit of a dose of happiness and find out what can happen if you do. You've been amazingly attentive. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.